Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Conan. Today, I want to talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder, as I tend to do from time to time here on the channel. I think you've probably noticed. I haven't gotten to talk about them too much, really at all, since they won the championship, because they haven't done anything this offseason. They brought in Thomas Sorber in the draft, who I like a lot. Brooks Barnhizer comes in. They switch up like some two-way guys, but didn't really make any major changes. And that's unusual. A lot of championship teams will make an upgrade, or they'll have some guys leaving free agency and have to address that a little bit. But the Thunder kind of just running this thing back. Second youngest championship team ever, extremely dominant regular season, maybe the most dominant regular season ever when you think about the records that the Thunder broke, with double-digit wins and the second best net rating ever, despite dealing with like legitimate injuries to Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso all throughout the season. You know, they went on to win the championship. Like, I don't need to tell you how this Thunder season went. Y'all know I've rambled about it enough. But beyond that, I feel like because, you know, the Nuggets have made additions and the Rockets and teams out east, I feel like I've started to see more and more people say that the Thunder aren't their pick to win the championship next year, or that they no longer think Oklahoma City is the team to beat in the Western Conference. And there are a lot of really good teams. If you pick somebody else, I get it. But of course, as a biased source, I'm going to try and explain to you why I think people don't really grasp how much scarier the Thunder are going to be this season. You thought the Thunder were good this past year with one of the best seasons ever. I think there is so much room to improve and a much higher ceiling, specifically in the playoffs. Because I'm going to be honest, even as a Thunder fan, I don't think it was the best playoff run ever from the Thunder. It felt like it was a little bit below their standards at times. Of course, they went to a Game 7 against the Nuggets and a Game 7 against the Pacers, and ultimately they won a championship. Like, I'm not complaining at all, but I think whether it's, you know, Jalen Williams dealing with the hand injury, so not playing up to his level, I think that's there, or Chet Holmgren only coming back towards the end of the season off a broken hip, so not always looking the most comfortable offensively, or not really having time to really build as much chemistry as you might want to between Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein, that double big lineup. Like I said, Alex Caruso was in and out of the lineup a little bit, so the whole unit didn't get to gel as much as some of the other teams out there. Of course, there were still those moments of inexperience and youth, whether it's game 1 against Denver losing on the Aaron Gordon shot, or game 1 against Indiana. You know, they went down 2-1 twice, and they were able to go ahead and roll with those punches as an extremely young team and show that they were the best team in the NBA. But I feel like now that they've got that playoff experience and the fact that it is the second youngest championship team ever, there's still so much room for this Thunder team to improve, to the point where I think they are going to repeat, and I think they're going to be vastly scarier in the playoffs next year compared to this season. And I don't think a lot of people are going to be quite ready for that. So let's talk about the specifics of it. I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just put on one of the best seasons ever. MVP, Finals MVP, champion, Western Conference Finals MVP, led the league in scoring, had all these crazy numbers, records tied to him. And yet, I still think there's room for him to be better. Like, for example, this year, it felt like he really tried to emphasize being a better playmaker and being a more versatile three-point shooter. And like with the threes, I know there are a lot of games where Thunder fans are like, Shai, please stop shooting 8 threes. But then you saw at times in the playoffs where it was huge because he was more comfortable taking those shots. And with him building up that comfort and always seeming to work on specifically that type of shot in his game, I think Shai is going to come back this season as a much better three-point shooter with a lot of, you know, versatile looks in his arsenal. That's going to make him a more dangerous perimeter threat, is already one of the best downhill attackers that the guard position has ever seen. He's up there in that conversation. So you make him even more versatile offensively. What do you really do with Shai? How do you possibly guard him? And then that comes with the playmaking. He really felt like he took note multiple times in the playoffs where people were talking about, hey, he needs to be better as a playmaker, like last year against Dallas. That was something that he could have been better at. And all throughout the season, he brought out a much wider array of passes, of a more advanced reads. You could see Shai really reading the court a lot better. And now that he's done that on a championship run, and he's going to have presumably more firepower around him than ever, I think we're going to see a better playmaking Shai. Obviously, you know, the scoring is one thing, but I think to be a number 1 option and a true top championship guy in today's league, you have to be able to play make as well. And Shai has rapidly improved at that. You saw that multiple points throughout the finals run. So Shai, even if he doesn't get better, even if he's just the same player as last year, he's right up there in the conversation for best player on the planet. Never mind if he improves the way that I think he's going to. And that comes with the very much expected improvements for me from Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, the number 2, the number 3 guys on this team. And Chet, I specifically think, is the X factor. I feel like he's one of the most underrated players in basketball right now. I tweeted out a few days ago that Chet is a top 5 center in the league. And if you don't think so, like, that's fine. You know, that's fine. But you better think he's like 6 or a 7 or an 8, because I saw some people saying he's not even top 10 or he's not top 15 or he sucks. And I saw all the reactions to Chet Holmgren's contract saying that he's massively overpaid. I don't think people realize that Chet is at minimum a top 3 defender on the planet right now. He is the most important defender. He's the best defender, most impactful defender in this Thunder team. Love Lou, love Caruso, Case, and all these guys. J-Dub is also one of the best defenders on the planet. Like, it's just one of the best defensive units ever. It has an argument to be the single best, specifically on the perimeter. But I think Chet Holmgren, as the guy patrolling down low, like the Thunder don't win the championship without Chet. And yeah, there were offensive woes, but as I've noted a few times in some videos, Chet before the hip injury was playing out of his mind offensively. He was shooting over 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and putting up like 19, almost 20 points a game. If that Chet Holmgren comes out even somewhat consistently next season, the Thunder are going to take a big leap on the offensive end, and just by virtue of having Chet out there defensively, are going to be an even better defensive unit. And then you go into the playoffs, and if Chet's a more versatile offensive weapon, it makes that whole scoring unit a lot more potent because the Thunder defense always held up throughout the playoffs. But offensively, there were some struggles, there were some rough patches here and there, but if Chet is being this unicorn scorer like he was showcasing at the beginning of the season before, again, he broke his hip, then life for the Thunder is just so easy. Like suddenly it's like, how do you possibly stop this team? Especially if Dub is back to himself, if he's healthier. Again, he went on a championship run as a second option and dropped 40 in the NBA Finals with a torn ligament in his wrist that keeps players out for like months. Derek Queen, I believe right now is going through that. I think it's him. He's going through that injury and there's real question marks about how ready he's going to be for the start of the season. And Dub tore that ligament, like I think it was April 9th. It was right there at the end of the season against the Phoenix Suns. So he went through all of that. He dropped a whole YouTube video talking about taking like cortisol shots and pain shots or whatever the thing is into his wrist before every single game, and it would swell up huge, and there were multiple times players fell on it. So the fact that he was still able to be a second option on a championship team and provide all of that and have those big time moments despite that, I can only imagine what he's going to be capable of doing with more experience and not with a wrist that is completely messed up that would normally keep him out for maybe months. Oh, and another factor with those injuries specifically to Chet is that you didn't get to see as much time gelling with the double big lineup. Like the double big was very up and down throughout the playoffs. It was up and down the home stretch of the regular season, but now you can give it real stress testing in the regular season. You can maybe try more looks with Chet at the 5 and see what other lineups work with him there. Like it feels like towards the end of last season, the Thunder were just trying to like shove the double big thing out there and be like, please work, let's see what works. And it didn't always. Now there's so much more time to really experiment and figure out what lineups, what combinations work best going into the playoffs. And I think that's going to make the Thunder a lot more of a well-oiled machine. It's going to make them a lot more versatile and give OKC a lot more go-to looks against certain matchups. That's a really underrated weapon to put in Mark Daignault's arsenal. Never mind the fact that he has now coached a deep playoff run. He's coached a championship team. He's a championship coach. That adds a huge level of experience for him against some of the other head coaches in this Western Conference or in the NBA as a whole. And obviously, alongside that top 3 that, again, I expect to get better, it is one of the youngest championship teams ever, the second youngest. So you talk about like Case and Wallace, who got a lot more on-ball reps last year and is rapidly improving as a defensive player. He's going to bring a lot to the table next season. And obviously Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, Lou Dort, those guys are still young. None of them are going to regress. Maybe the Thunder get something out of Ousmane Dieng. Fingers crossed, Dieng gang. This is the year we go ahead and we showcase the world what we're capable of. But even if you don't, like, you know, Kenrich Williams is still young. Really the only guy who could theoretically regress, who's at that age where regression could hit, is Alex Caruso. And I'm not banking on that because the Thunder have enough talent to let him rest throughout the regular season if need be, like they kind of did this year, and then deploy him in heavy minutes in the playoffs. Like he was out there guarding Nikola Jokic and one of the most consistent shooters on the team. I'm not really worried about Caruso regressing in any way. Last year was probably his most impactful season. It was his most impactful season of his entire career. So I'm not really worried about him regressing in any major way. So not only is it a team that's bringing everybody back, but there's not like a weak link you could look at and they're like, oh, but are they going to regress a little bit? Are they getting too old? Like, are you going to have to phase somebody else into this role? No, you don't need any of that. But there are options out there if you want more playmaking, if you want more off the dribble scoring, you know, getting downhill with like AJ Mitchell, for example, who was phenomenal in the summer league, who had really, really good moments last year, had some really killer games, but dealt with an injury that kept him out a majority of the season, didn't get to play at all down the stretch of the year. Now he's going to come into this season as a year 2 player who I really think is going to make a real impact. And I don't think people are going to be ready for it. He was an automatic paint touch a lot of last season. He was really solid as a shooter, super confident with the ball in his hands, gives me kind of Jalen Brunson vibes. He has kind of that like shifty, smaller guard type game. Not that AJ Mitchell's like super small, but if you just watch him play, you'll see what I'm talking about. Where it feels like he shouldn't be able to get to the spots that he does, and he still manages to find his way. And also another solid playmaking option, Nikola Topic comes into the fold now. Of course, missed all of last year. Was going to be a top 5 pick in last year's draft if he didn't end up tearing his ACL before, and that could impact him. There definitely were some moments of unsureness and kind of adjusting in summer league, but that's to be expected for someone who hasn't played NBA level basketball yet, who didn't play basketball for a full calendar year. And I'm not expecting him to be this huge game changer in year one for a championship level team. I think that's unrealistic, but I do think just having him as a playmaker and another option is good. It just makes the Thunder more versatile. Like, I could see a world where he gets a couple of playoff minutes in select scenarios and he's dishing a really nice pass or two, and suddenly the Thunder have hit a couple of corner threes. Like, I think he's that type of player that could swing a game slightly, even if it's not a lot. But also, this isn't a team that's just talking about next year. It's the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. And with Shai, Dub, and Chet getting paid, the Thunder are going to need some guys to step up over the course of these next few years. And that's where we get to Nikola Topic and AJ Mitchell and Thomas Sorber eventually, and Brooks Barnhizer, guys like that. But even like Case and Wallace is still really young, and Dub and Shai and Chet. It's just crazy how long the runway is. Even if the Thunder don't repeat, this is going to be a terrifying force at the top of the Western Conference for like the next 5-6 years. The people that think that the second apron is going to doom the Thunder are just mistaken, and I don't think realize what this team is capable of for the next 5-6, however many years you want to go down the line. And that, of course, also comes with the Thunder having still 1 million draft picks. Like, if, Thunder go into this year and still feel like the shooting isn't enough, because that was one of the bigger question marks in the playoffs. Presti has 1 million picks at his disposal to go out there and trade for a shooter. Like, he could put the contracts of an Isaiah Joe or an Aaron Wiggins together and has enough to go out there and get someone making right around $20 million and bring them into the fold. Or trade away a young guy like an Ousmane Dieng, for example, and make something happen there. And those picks, of course, too, are a critical weapon to avoiding the second apron, to making life easier, getting around those restrictions. Like, nobody's in a better position to handle the second apron and have an extremely long runway of championship contention the way that the Thunder are. Nobody's in a better position than Oklahoma City when it comes to winning now and winning long term, which as a fan is a super cool position to be in. But yeah, I just don't think people grasp how terrifying this team is, not just next season, how much scarier it's about to get, but even down the line. I feel like some people are still trying to rationalize. They're like, oh, this team wasn't super dominant this year, so I don't think they're this super dominant champion or going to be super dominant going forward. The Thunder are about to get vastly, vastly better. The ceiling is so high. Chet could be a top 10 player. J-Dub is like top 15-ish right now. He could get better and be in the conversation for top 10 this season with the defensive and offensive potential that he has, as already one of the best defenders on the planet, and a guy who I think is still so much room to improve and become more consistent as an offensive player. Because the first 2 years of his career, J-Dub was one of the most efficient scorers in the entire league. And this year there was a little bit of a tail off. He was being asked to play some center a bit more, and continuously being asked to do so much and pick up a little bit defensive with Chet out of the fold, with him being back. I think he's going to be in his much more natural role, and he's going to be a lot more efficient, get back to that level. There are like really no flaws with this Thunder team in any legitimate way, and still so many assets to improve. That's so crazy. There have not been many teams in a position the way that the Thunder are now. And really, if I just want to give you like a thesis for this video, it's the fact that the Thunder just had one of the most dominant seasons ever while dealing with injuries, and in the first real year where they were like the championship favorites. It's the first time the Thunder have been in that position, and they got the job done. I think they're capable of being a lot more dominant in the playoffs this upcoming season. And I don't think people realize that yet. They're about to be, again, a historic defense, one of the best ever. I think with Chet healthy, this could make a solidified argument as the single best defensive team in the history of the sport. Last year's team already did that, but I think this year they could be better. I also think they're going to be better offensively too. I think it'll be the best defense in like a top 2 to 3 offense in basketball. We'll see where the net rating lands, or if they try to break any of their own records next year, or, if they try to break the win record. I've seen some Thunder fans say, could they get there? And I don't know. I could see a world where they rest a few more guys, because now the Thunder have got the job done. They won 68 last year. It's not super necessary to chase 70 wins. It's obviously about the repeat. But, maybe they just say go for it the way that the 2016 Warriors did. Although that team, of course, lost in the finals. So maybe that's a bad example to use. But yeah, those are some of my thoughts on the Thunder. Just want to give a little bit of a ramble, talk about why they're, even scarier going into next season, despite the fact that they didn't make additions. The continuity, the youth of this team, and the top level talent is more than enough to still have them as the best team in the Western Conference. And right now, they are the strong favorites to win the championship. I think that's for good reason. But yeah, let me know what you think down below in the comments. Am I too high on them? Do you think that they can beat the win record? Things like that. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Appreciate watching. I'll see y'all later. Everyone, say it back.